You've said there's roughly a 10 to 25% chance of civilizational collapse. That is not insignificant. Is there a scenario where it's something that Anthropic built that caused that?
I certainly hope not. My view is that the actions that we have taken lower that probability rather than increasing it, right? That probability comes from the very straightforward recipe of the technology, the existence of many countries in the world, the existence of many companies within an economy and new ones created if the void isn't filled. Like, that's a dilemma that we're in. We are trying to act to lower that probability. I think we lower it a lot more than we raise it. But, the inherent property of this technology is that it's unpredictable. And so, we try to build something and test it a lot before it's released. And then the models that were released today are not dangerous, or at least not, really, I think, dangerous outside of cyber.
A 10 to 25% chance of civilizational collapse. That is not some random number from a forum. That's the CEO of Anthropic, the company behind Claude, saying the technology he is building right now could end everything, and then he follows it up by admitting the models are unpredictable. Now listen to the full conversation.
I've always said, and if you go back to those original clips, they always get cut out of context in the 3 seconds, but the real statement was always, I don't know what's going to happen, but this is an order of magnitude for how crazy things could be. Also, I always talk about all the things we can do in response to this, right? I've talked about token tax and working with enterprises to adjust people, and I'm a little skeptical of retraining programs, but we should throw them in the mix. Macroeconomic policy. Even from the beginning, I always talked about solutions, but somehow there's this tendency in the human psychology to clip the 3 seconds of doom is coming. So my message is just definitely not doom is coming. My message is this is something, that we should see coming, that we're worried about, and that we need to actually respond to positively. I don't know exactly, but I'm still pretty concerned. I'm still the same order of concerns. We are seeing right now that AI is making people more productive, but that's the usual hump. If you go back, to the kind of industrial revolution, I wrote about this in Adolescence of Technology. You automate 90% of the job, great, people are 10 times more productive in the other 10% because they're 10 times more leveraged. But eventually it gets close to 100%. Now, the sequel to that is, well, then you have to find something else for them to do. I don't know about the long run. I'm truly uncertain about that. But I do think there are types of adaptation. One thing I'll talk about is, software engineers within Anthropic. We're going through this transition right now where, right now AI makes the software engineers more productive, even though AI writes all the code or almost all the code. But still, it makes people more productive. But we're already starting to see the beginning of there may be some people that it's not making more productive, that it's better for the AI to just do the thing. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, though, is what do we need more demand for? There's something we call a forward deployed engineer, or an applied AI solutions architect, where their job is a mix of technical work and talking to customers. There's a lot of demand for that because there's a lot of customers and we're growing very quickly. Now, does every person who is in the pure software engineering quite work for this? No, it's not perfect. It's not one-to-one. That gives you a flavor of there's going to be a hell of a lot of disruption, but things will also adjust.
He says it starts with making you 10 times more productive, and then eventually the machine just does the whole thing and you are left standing there with nothing left to contribute. That is not a maybe. That is the path they are already seeing inside their own company. Now, listen to this.
You put out this chart showing potential job disruption, like sales, finance, which jobs go away, who gets replaced, and what new jobs are created.
So no one knows for sure, because, the economy is unpredictable, right? It's the same as the stock market, right? They're these kind of decentralized processes that you don't really know ahead of time what are the pieces of the job that people are still going to be able to do. But what I would say broadly is that, anywhere that you have, these kind of entry level white collar, whether it's banking, whether it's finance, whether it's, there's going to be a lot of potential for AI to first make people more productive, but then there's going to be then there's going to be a wholesale AI can do the job, and then we're going to have to think about, what is it that people can do? And I think we need to plan about that ahead of time. We're already doing it when we talk to enterprise customers. We see choices that they face. They face the choice of, should I save costs, which often means hiring less people, basically do the same thing with less resources, or should we do more things with the same amount of resources? And we always, when we can, try to push them to doing more with the same amount of resources, because basically that means like hire the same number of people or maybe even more people, but just do kind of do new things, pushing them towards the positive sum. The thing that we have going for us here is the pie is going to expand a lot. And so because the pie is going to expand a lot, there are probably going to be places where people can go. It's just a matter of finding them fast enough. It's the size of the disruption. It's going to be big, and that's what I'm warning people about. But we have to solve that matching problem.
So play this out for me a little bit. You wake up in 5 years. What does this country look like? What are those people doing?
Yeah.
Because if there's that much unemployment, is that not how revolutions start?
Yeah, no, this is the outcome we want to prevent. This is absolutely the outcome we want to prevent. I think there's a few places. None of them are guaranteed, we're not sure, but there's the physical world, right? Like things that are in the physical world. Yes, there's a robotics revolution as well, but it's a lot slower than what's happening in AI. People always talk about building data centers, but like when processing information of any type becomes a lot easier, maybe the restriction is going to be things in the physical world. And so we need a lot of more people to make, build, manufacture things in the physical world. Anything that's human-centered, I think that's going to be a big deal, right? I hear all these stories about AI found something that my doctor couldn't find, and I feel happy. But people really want to talk to other humans, particularly over kind of important things, right? Maybe AI can do better customer service, but nevertheless, people, or at least some people, want to talk to humans. So these kind of human relationship-driven jobs, I think those are going to be important, right? And I think there'll be some effort by the humans to kind of direct the AIs, right? At some level, it has to be in line with someone's values and someone's intentions. And so I think there's going to be some role there, although I don't know how thin versus how thick it will be. I think it's very hard to say.
Guys, he admits the disruption is going to be big, and then the interviewer asks the only question that matters. If that many people lose their footing, is that not how revolutions start? His response is, yes, that is the outcome we are trying to prevent. No denial, just an honest fear dressed up as a plan.
Bloomberg has reported that Claude is being used by the US military in the war in Iran to do AI-assisted targeting via platform made by Palantir Maven Smart System. In February, a US missile reportedly hit a girls' school in Iran, killing more than 150 people, most of them children. Did Claude play a role in that strike?
We don't have access to, we don't know exactly how, these models were used. Obviously, these things that mistakes that happen in warfare are really, really terrible. This is a really terrible thing to happen. If that doesn't make clear why we have to, stand up for use cases that, we don't support, we were willing to risk the future of our company to limit how these models are used. And what you're talking about is a use case that doesn't even violate our red lines. We're worried that there will be 100 times as much, with use cases that do violate our red lines. Now, again, I would say I think overall the use of these models is appropriate. I think it's good on net. But military decision makers make terrible mistakes, even at the best of times. And I don't know if we're in the best of times. There are several things we can talk about. We can talk about making red lines that, prevent uses of the models that are more likely to lead to those problems, right? If we had allowed, if we had just given in, which almost every other company now has, to fully autonomous weapons, right? This is like a human. What we've seen here is Claude assists, but a human makes the final call. So a human made that final call, not Claude. Imagine if you had a world in which not Claude, because we haven't allowed it, but someone else's AI model, the AI model just makes the decision and the human never sees it. That's what we were standing up for. That's what we were fighting against. I would also say, there's a separate thing here. Again, I don't think procurement is the right way to do it, but like, you know, we need to make sure that, you know, it's a matter of interest to the American people, not to me as a supplier of the technology, but to the American people, that our military decision makers don't make these mistakes, that they operate reliably, that, you know, they choose wisely what to do. Again, you know, that's of concern to me as a citizen, as a supplier of the technology. Like, you know, the government uses Microsoft Excel a lot. You know, if I said you can use Excel for, you know, this military operation, but not you can't realistically do that. But hopefully that gives you a sense of how we think about it.
This school had a website. You could have found it in a Google search. Like, shouldn't Claude have spotted that? Shouldn't AI or whatever technology they used have spotted that? And does it speak to a scarier issue about using technology as a shortcut in war?
Look, what I'm going to say is, you know, I don't know. This relies on, you know, maybe classified knowledge that I don't have, but you know, the principle that we have established, and I think the principle that was obeyed here, is a human makes the final decision. I don't know what role Claude or any other AI had, but like, if this isn't an illustration why that principle is so important, I don't know what is.
He cannot tell you whether his own AI helped unalive those children. 150 people, most of them kids, and the CEO of the company that built the model says he does not know if his technology was in the loop. And then he says this event does not even cross his red lines. Whatever comes next is what actually scares him.
Anthropic's making headlines almost on a weekly basis, yes. And most notably now around Mythos, of course.
This is the latest and greatest Anthropic model, and it is capable of going through all the links of the cyber kill chain and doing so autonomously.
You said Mythos was too powerful to release to the public. What surprised you most about it?
I think the thing that surprised me most about it was the models had been climbing in their ability to find vulnerabilities and, importantly, turn those vulnerabilities into exploits, which people only talk about the vulnerabilities. They don't often talk about turning the vulnerabilities into exploits, which it was quite good at. So the things that surprised me are we saw this huge jump. It was a particularly large jump. And without us really prompting them at all, some of the early companies that we gave this to said things like, this is a super weapon. You should have to own a gun license to use it. Please don't release this. Like, the demand to do this was coming from the companies we gave it to, who were finding so many critical vulnerabilities and exploitability around these critical vulnerabilities that, you know, they were basically asking us not to release it. Now, to be clear, because things always get distorted in the world of social media, the goal isn't to keep this locked up forever. We're kind of gradually trying to open this up to a wider and wider set of people, and eventually we believe that we should release Mythos to a general audience, but with kind of strong cyber safeguards. Now, a concern is today's cyber safeguards, which we did release on Opus 4.7, which is a good cyber model, but a substantially weaker one. These can be jailbroken, and we're a little concerned about some of the other companies who think this is a sufficient defense, because yeah, it works sometimes, but you know, we all know that these classifiers can be jailbroken or gone around, and our own testing, as well as frankly our assessment of the models that the defenses that other companies have put in place, suggests that these defenses are not strong enough yet. And that's what we're waiting for, getting the defenses to the point where we really have confidence in them.
There was a lot of pushback on it. You have researchers saying they were able to replicate it using, cheaper open source models. Some folks say OpenAI, has these capabilities already. What do you say to folks who say this is a grand PR play?
The claim that could be replicated with open source models, that's just incredibly false. So the idea is Mythos looks across the whole code base and finds something. Some guy went on Twitter and said, well, if you point an open source model at exactly the line of code that Mythos finds, then it finds the same issue. That isn't the prompt. That isn't the question, right? Like that is not the same thing. The ultimate test of this is like, we go to companies, we go to open source repos. We found 271 new vulnerabilities in Firefox. We found many thousands within the private, companies who haven't fixed them yet or can't disclose them yet. Like, No one found those 271 vulnerabilities with the previous models. So like the actual workflow of what actually works in practice, as opposed to, okay, I find the exact line that Mythos found, I found the needle in the haystack, something else can now pick up the needle.
But what about the folks who say this was just good marketing?
We have suffered enormously commercially from not releasing this model.
His own early testers told him this model is a super weapon, that you should need a license to use it, and begged him not to release it. He found hundreds of unknown vulnerabilities in Firefox alone. And yet he knows this thing will eventually be in the wild because every other company is racing to build the same capability, and their defenses are not ready.
So I actually think that's a very serious question, and I share those concerns. I don't think the government should outright take us over, but I would put it this way. I would say, just to back up and describe the situation, every previous powerful technology we've seen in history was either built by the government or originated with the government. So nuclear weapons, obviously, initially built by the government and pretty much built by the government after that. But even like the internet, GPS, cell phones, all the R&D was done in the labs, in the federal labs and the universities. AI is the first technology that's been built in the private sector, and where government has not really had a serious role and is coming in late to the game. I think that's actually a dangerous and unstable situation. It is not the situation I would have chosen. There's not really an alternative, like, this technology is possible to build, our adversaries are building, it has economic value, like it's gonna get built. The issue is the government not doing it, not the private sector doing it. I think we need to think about checks and balances on power. So I think there need to be checks and balances on the power of the AI companies, right? We have this thing, the long-term benefit trust. What that is it's a set of, basically, it's a body that can appoint the majority of the board members and remove the majority of the board members. So it essentially, if you thread it through, has the power to fire me. And what we're looking at is we're introducing some elements, nowhere near all the elements, but we're introducing a little bit of the elements of like public governance, right? Where it's like, you're accountable to someone who doesn't just have stock in the company. So that's very important, and that structure is going to continue no matter what happens to the company. That's on the AI, and we encourage other companies to have similar structures. On the government side, I think we need checks and balances. There are efforts in Congress that have been announced to enact those red lines, right? So I really think the legislative branch and the judicial branch need to exert themselves, because this technology, I'm scared of companies having it, but I'm also scared of government having it. And then the companies need to provide checks on government, and the government needs to provide checks on companies. We need basic regulation of the technology. I think we need to start doing pre-release testing, required pre-release testing and auditing of the models. It's very funny to me how there's a particular group of people in the tech world in Silicon Valley who started, they started with a position of like even having transparency around this technology, even export control. This is all, just totally, it'll apocalyptically destroy our potential to create the technology. It'll kill innovation. And then as soon as they see the first real danger, which I've been expecting all along, there's all this talk of like nationalization and the government should just seize it. Come on, folks, here you're yo-yoing from like the most extreme anti-regulatory, if you look at us the wrong way, you're destroying the industry, to this completely communist, the government should grab it all. We need a more sensible, moderate approach. That's the one we've been favoring all along, because we've understood the power of this technology. We're not panicking, we're not denying it. We see the smooth exponential and we're responding to it appropriately.
He straight up says the current situation is dangerous and unstable. The government is late, the companies hold all the power, and the only thing keeping him in check is a trust that can fire him. Think about how fragile that sounds. One boardroom decision away from no oversight at all. So the guy who built Claude just walked you through the next 5 years. Entry-level jobs erased, whole industries hollowed out, a cyber weapon too dangerous to release but being forced into the open anyway, and a military already using his models in ways he cannot fully track or stop. And the government, by his own admission, is showing up late to a game that is already being decided. If you are not preparing for what this means for your own life right now, you are betting that the smooth exponential somehow skips your street. subscribe, because I am going to keep following this story as it accelerates, and nobody is going to slow down to wait for you.